The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS, the Voice of Stockton, or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Phone Booth here on the Voice of Stockton on KXVS Radio. My name is Ed Heitman, and joining me in the studio today is my good friend and co-host Brian Rodriguez.
Hello.
Also joining us in the studio today is our good friend and comics expert Ira Ford.
Yeah, how's it going?
How's everybody doing today?
Yeah, doing well.
Good to hear. Now, for those of you who might be unfamiliar with the premise of our show, The Phone Booth is a show that is completely dedicated to the world of pop culture. Anything from movies to TV shows to video games to comic books, you name it, and we do our very best to cover it. Now, this week, it's been a bad week for video games, hasn't it, guys?
It really has
A
been.
bad week. I actually wouldn't necessarily say bad, but it hasn't been like one of the greatest weeks, but yeah.
Been a lot of bad news for some big franchises. It's not, the worst week, but it's not been great.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But first off, before we get into any discussion pieces, it is time for us to enter our weekly wrap-up. In this segment, we like to recap on some of the events in pop culture that have happened within the week. Now, we have a couple of quick topics that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to go with some news that we might share a little bit of opinions over. Now, here's our quick little news. Now, our first little bit tidbit we have is that Hollow Knight's physical release has been canceled.
Yep.
Fortnite's concurrent player count has reached 8 million, to no one's surprise. Fallout 76 will have a 54 gigabyte day one patch for those of you who have gone out and gotten the game. And an upcoming Overwatch patch will require PC players to reinstall the game. For those of my friends out there who have the game, I apologize for such news. Now on to the actual topics we have. Now, to start things off, we've known for a while now that Jeremy Irons will be in HBO's Watchmen series. But now, we have an idea of who he's playing. According to Slash Film, Irons will be playing an older version of Adrian Veidt, a.k.a. Ozymandias.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Now, I have to apologize here. I'm not as familiar with the Watchmen universe as I am with other comic books. Would you guys mind filling me in on who Ozymandias is?
Well, you've seen the old Watchmen film from like 2009 or so.
I was able to watch a little bit of it.
Yeah, so basically, you remember the villain.
Yes.
Yeah, that's who played. I forget the actor who actually played him in that film, but that's basically the character.
Interesting.
From there, and so yeah, it's I haven't been too familiar with the entire franchise of Watchmen, even though it's basically that graphic novel from the 80s, and that film is the closest to my knowledge came. But in comic books recently, they brought the Watchmen back to like the regular DC universe, so
Yeah.
that's actually pretty interesting as well. Like Dr. Manhattan played a huge role in one of the recent events, I think Doomsday Clock or something like that.
Yep. Doomsday Clock.
Yeah, so yeah, it's great that Watchmen are actually coming back a bit. So yeah, and Jeremy Irons, I think he actually has potential as this as Ozymandias as a character. So can't wait to see what they do with him in this upcoming Watchmen series on HBO.
Yeah, in the Watchmen series, Ozymandias is essentially the smartest man on the planet, and he actually manipulates the entirety of the events in the Watchmen series in order to bring about world peace by sacrificing millions of lives in either a nuclear explosion in the movie or a fake alien attack in the graphic novel. And this HBO Watchmen series will be a sequel to that, so it looks like we'll be getting to see some of the ramifications and the potential reveal of his plan, as was hinted at the end of Watchmen.
They confirmed it's going to be a sequel to it?
Yep.
I missed that part of the news then, because I thought they were actually going to just make it like an original story based on the Watchmen.
The Watchmen
Pretty much.
series that's coming out, it's supposed to be, it's kind of its own story, but it's also taking place after the events of the first Watchmen movie.
Yeah.
So they're getting the same actors, I guess, to play the.
Not sure. They specifically said it's a sequel to the graphic novel and not the movie.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking you're saying sequel to the movie, but okay. So graphic novel art, then yeah. I'm thinking it's the movie.
They're paying a bit of attention to the comic detail, and yeah, I think that's interesting that we've gotten a little bit of info on who's going to at least be the villain in this series.
He was good, I think, as Alfred in Justice League, I believe. So
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He was pretty good. I do have to give credit to that. Yeah, thought that was pretty interesting. So for the next little bit of news, I'll pass it over to my good friend Brian. Take it away, man.
So this has been sort of a depressing week as a fan of Final Fantasy 15.
Mm-hmm.
On Wednesday, Square Enix hosted a live stream for the game where fans were anticipating announcement of release dates for any of the 4 upcoming DLCs or maybe some fun crossover like they had with Assassin's Creed. But instead, Square Enix announced that 3 of the 4 planned DLCs have been cancelled and that game director Hajime Tabata has left the company. Square announced that episodes Noctis, Lunafray, and Aranea have been cancelled, production has stopped, and the only one that is still in production is episode Arden. Now, we don't know exactly what these episodes were supposed to cover, but typically, with past episodes, they've covered bits of backstory for the characters, bits of the plot that, where the characters weren't there, that were never really covered in-game. And it's really, really disappointing to see these gone.
It really is disappointing. It's even more confusing, the fact that the DLC counts as background story to each individual character, and that one of the episodes that got canceled was episode Noctis, the main character of Final Fantasy 15, if I recall.
Yeah, and there were theories that episode was the... I'm going to spoil a 3-year-old game here right now, so hang on.
Honestly, I don't think folks would care.
Yeah,
Noctis dies at the end of Final Fantasy 15. He sacrifices his life to banish darkness from the world, and he dies. However, the game director Hajime Tabata hinted over the years that he may not have been permanently dead if fans didn't want him to be. So it was theorized episode Noctis was supposed to be sort of an epilogue as opposed to a sort of prequel prologue.
Yeah, it's a sad news for Final Fantasy fans who are, especially if you are a fan of Final Fantasy 15.
I love the game.
At least like you said, we got this at least one DLC in development. Episode Arden. Yeah, so hopefully that's we just gotta best to just look forward to that pretty much. And
yeah, I mean, one little bit of DLC is better than all of it being canceled, I suppose.
Yeah, and at least it's about the main villain of the game, whose backstory was really, underdeveloped.
Or for me personally, though, I'd say I just look more forward to, since I've always been more of a Kingdom Hearts fan than a Final Fantasy fan. Mm-hmm. So Kingdom Hearts 3, pretty much that. Yeah, I guess you should probably try to look forward to that to at least help ease the pain a bit from some of this news right here for Final Fantasy fans, because Kingdom Hearts is basically a little bit similar to Final Fantasy in terms of gameplay, and as it's still a JRPG, so
and they're vaguely tied into the same universe. Characters from Final Fantasy games do pop up in Kingdom Hearts games occasionally. I know in the first one we got to see Cloud, and
Sephiroth was in one of them.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts 2. Yeah, but on to our next little bit of news. Disney has announced that a new live-action Star Wars series, they've announced it'll be coming out for their streaming service. The new series will focus on Cassian Andor, the rebel spy from Rogue One. Diego Luna will reprise his role, and the show will obviously be a prequel. Now, what confuses me about this was, aren't they already trying to work on The Mandalorian?
Yeah, that's the first one they announced. This is the second one. The Mandalorian, I believe that's set sometime after The Force Awakens, or actually not The Force Awakens, the older Star Wars.
Return of the Jedi?
Yeah, Return of the Jedi. So, that's actually one a lot of people are looking forward to, because, it's starting a favorite character, and people actually would interested in that storyline. But this one, I'm not too sure about, though. But even though, Rogue One, was actually one of the better Star Wars modern Star Wars films in my opinion. So
it was in my opinion, I never really got to see too much of Rogue One, but from what I can say is that it's definitely one of the Star Wars films that has the best cinematography. Scenery, environments, planets, everything looked beautiful from what I was able to see. But I do gotta say, I'm surprised that they decided to do a series based off of a character from Rogue One. I kind of figured they would have done like a small sub character from like the main series of films, or at least somebody from the new trilogy that's out at the moment. The fact that they picked somebody from Rogue One catches me off guard. Can't say that there have been too many people I know who actually went to see Rogue One. No hate on the movie itself, but it's just it didn't come across as very popular when it came out.
It wasn't as big with the fans, but Cassian Andor is actually an interesting character in that. In the Star Wars series, you always get the Rebel Alliance as, the sterling good guys and the Empire is evil. And Cassian Andor sort of portrayed that the Rebel Alliance has shades of gray to it. He's, told to kill basically innocent people in order to further the rebellion's agenda and hurt the Empire. And you see a much darker side of what is traditionally, the sterling rebellion.
Well, yeah, I guess, it'd be interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some trailers about it. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the premise, the plot, what character development we might get from our leading character. Just for the most part, I kind of have to be a little skeptical when it comes to Star Wars shows, because some of them do well, like the Clone Wars. But then there's
the Clone
other
Wars. You guys see the new Star Wars Resistance and things like that?
That one
anime.
looks like it will be...
I haven't seen Resistance yet, but it has gotten a lot of backlash.
It came out a couple weeks ago, I believe. So I saw like the first episode. It was all right, but these live action shows those are trying to see what they can do with those. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Anyways, I'll pass this next bit of news over to my good friend Brian. Take it away, man.
Netflix has announced they are working on anime adaptations of Altered Carbon and Pacific Rim. We don't know the exact release dates of these projects, but Netflix has said they will be within 2019.
This was, I believe, Netflix announced they were going to do anime based off of 5 different projects, but these are the 2 most popular.
Yeah, these are
the ones they announced, I think, that they were working on. Okay.
Now, Altered Carbon is actually not that surprising, given that the live-action show was a monumental success for Netflix. It's gotten a 2nd season ordered. So an anime adaptation kind of makes sense. Pacific Rim is really the surprising one here.
Yeah, well, I think Pacific Rim, actually, it basically, in my opinion, already was kind of like a live-action adapted anime during the first movie. So, yeah, kind of like, how they're doing Ghost in the Shell and all that. But so I could see, actually, some potential for a Pacific Rim anime, because it was, in my opinion, it was already basically was an anime first before it was a live action movie, just the way it was.
Oh yeah, it was a love letter to mech anime, and it's just
a love letter to kaiju movies like Godzilla.
Yeah. So a lot of kaiju. There could never be enough kaiju anime out there, in my opinion. So,
and honestly, we also have a lot of anime that's about people in giant mech suits, and Godzilla has had a couple of anime adaptations in the past, so this isn't really too much of a surprise to me. What I am wondering, though, is I kind of have my hopes in for the story being good, because with Pacific Rim, it is nice to see the giant mech fights. That's why a lot of people go in to watch the films and everything. But I think the problems that a lot of people had with the sequel to Pacific Rim that came out,
it was bad.
Was that if it detracted so much from the story that it kind of had built up to kind of just brag like, hey, we have giant robots. Go see our movie because we have giant robots. Michael Bay's doing it. You love it. You'll love this too.
Yeah, if Pacific Rim was a love letter to anime, Pacific Rim Uprising was a love letter to the purpose of old mecha anime, which was to sell toys to children. That's really the entire reason the movie exists. There's barely any plot, but there are a bunch of cool robots they linger on just long enough to show off all their special features and where you could get one at a store near you.
And where to buy? I thought it was funny that you mentioned that, because after that movie came out, they had a bunch of model kits to build the Jaegers, just like they do with the Gundam robots and everything. Man, it's crazy. On to the next little bit of news, though. AMC has announced that a trilogy of Walking Dead movies are in the works. The movies will star Andrew Lincoln as Rick Grimes and will supposedly continue his story after the TV show.
Yeah, so you guys caught up with Walking Dead?
I myself, I can't really I can't really watch the show, honestly, because it throws me off way too many times. I remember watching the first season, seeing the first couple episodes, and I thought that it was really, really interesting. I loved the suspense of the zombie genre. But it's been going on for so long that vibe is gone.
9 seasons in, pretty much. Yeah, I've been watching the show like since it first started, like about 8 years ago, in 2010. Yeah, it's pretty good. Actually, the Rick's final episode was actually pretty good. Like, it was actually amazing from a lot of critics on the way that he went out, pretty much. Don't know if he's actually dead or not, but he's going to star in like these 3 movies that they're going to basically explore what happens after basically his last episode on The Walking Dead, pretty much. And yeah, so it's actually I'm pretty interested in seeing where they go from here, pretty much, after what happened with the season 9 last episode, pretty much.
And we kind of can't talk about this subject without spoiling it, so I'm just going to go out there. The Andrew Lincoln left this season on The Walking Dead, and they made a big deal about, Rick Grimes is leaving, and they made it seem like he was going to die. He doesn't die. He gets wounded by zombies, and then just sort of gets carried off by a helicopter in the end. And that's the end of Rick Grimes on the TV show, at least.
So,
honestly, I can't be too surprised about that, because Hollywood's kind of been doing that with a lot of their shows, making a big deal that a certain character's leaving and something big's going to happen. Never thought I'd say this, but that whole Walking Dead incident is very similar to what Modern Family did.
Yeah.
Because when Modern Family was going to come out with a new season, they said, a major character is going to die. And everybody freaked out because they were trying to figure out which cast member it was that was going to die. And in the end, it was a side character. Jay's ex-wife had passed away, and she was not really an important main character. And I kind of felt like that's what The Walking Dead did with this one. They're going to make it seem like such a big deal, like he was going to die some epic death, and then it's just...
And also, I think it's confirmed, like, these might end up being, like, television movies and not, like, theater movies or anything like that.
I think they said they wanted them to be theatrical.
Oh, because I assume that they might make television movies like on AMC or something like that. Or
honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, because they already announced they want The Walking Dead to just kind of go on for years now. They wanted to keep going and going and going.
They already have one spin-off. They might do another one.
They said they have plans for the next 10 years.
That's
I'm
why
looking up a 5, but just multiply that by 2.
That's why I'm constantly saying that The Walking Dead's a zombie of its former self, because it cannot die. It seems like it's going to, but then it constantly respawns itself. It just keeps moving. Once it was close to ending, then we got Fear the Walking Dead.
Yeah,
and
so
it just kept going.
Basically the spin-offs are what's going to keep it going for the next 10 years, pretty much, is what I think. In my opinion,
Yeah. Anyways, Brian, I'll leave this next little bit over to you, man.
So, speaking of AMC, it appears that there may be a Breaking Bad film in the works.
Yes!
Now, this has been rumored for about a week now, and seems to have been confirmed by Bryan Cranston, the star of...
Walter White himself, ladies.
Yep. Now, it looks like Vince Gilligan, the show's creator, has been working with AMC to create a 2-hour film set after the events of the series finale. The film will apparently focus on Jesse Pinkman after his escape from Albuquerque. Now, Bryan Cranston has said he has not signed on to do this film, but he has read the script for it.
And I'm honestly excited about that, because we don't really know too much about what happened after the events of Breaking Bad. I know that with Better Call Saul, we get a little bit of like what happened with Saul.
It's a prequel, pretty much, with Saul. His last name, Saul, the lawyer.
Saul Goodman, yeah. It's a prequel, but at the same time, we also get random clips of like him after the events of Breaking Bad, after he had ran away and was living a new life. And I'm kind of hoping that we might get to see a little bit of that into this new movie, because it's wasted potential if you don't get Saul in there.
Yeah, more Breaking Bad is always a good thing for most people. So hopefully, so like you said, Bryan Cranston hasn't signed on yet, but he most likely is going to end up signing on. I guess Breaking Bad was one of the highlights of his career, so I guess he's always ready for more of that. So
I'm sure.
But so these could another television movies, I believe, as well from AMC.
Honestly, I would be excited if Bryan Cranston was involved in the film, because it is one of his most iconic roles. Before that, I feel bad about it, but before Breaking Bad, I recognized him as the dad from Malcolm in the Middle.
That was really his biggest role before Breaking Bad, which is why it freaked people out so much when he went from, the fun comedy dad to the dark murder dad.
Yeah, the dark drug dealing kingpin is it's crazy. Anyways, on to the next little bit of news. The CW is planning a reboot of the 4400 in 2019. The 4400 was a show centered around 4,400 people that had gone missing over the decades, suddenly appearing in the modern day, having no memories of what happened to them or having aged a day. The reboot will have an almost identical premise.
Yeah.
Now, I remember that when the 4400 came out, I was pretty young, so I didn't get to remember too
Yeah,
many episodes.
I never watched too much of 4400 either myself.
Yeah.
Even though I seen maybe a couple of episodes, a few, but never really stuck with it.
I watched the first 3 of the 4 seasons, and it started out good, and then it got weird. It started out, people appearing from all over time, and, the government trying to figure out what to do with them, what happened to them.
It sounded pretty similar to Lost to me, basically, because that's another show that has like a similar premise to the sound of the 4400. So that's and if it's Lost was one of my favorite shows to watch, sci-fi shows, and so it's basically that's what I think that this new 4400 can replace pretty much, in my opinion.
Yeah, and as the show went on, it went kind of off the rails. They all started getting superpowers, the people that disappeared, and eventually one person managed to synthesize it into a serum that he handed out to the masses, and so it sort of turned into heroes. And there was also the reason they went missing was because time travelers plucked them out of time to give them superpowers to save the world by sending them into this specific point in the past, and they completely lost what they were doing with it, and I'm hoping maybe they can avoid that with the reboot.
I think it's funny that you brought up Heroes, because that was another show that started off so good, but then started to get weird into further seasons and everything.
With current trends, in 5 years, we should be getting a Heroes reboot.
Oh,
I believe we actually got that a couple of years ago.
That was a continuation, and it was terrible.
That was a continuation?
Yeah, Heroes Reborn, which, despite its title, was
I'm just saying, with all the new superhero shows, like on these days, like Marvel shows, DC shows, and all the other comic book shows, I'm not sure how a reboot of Heroes would really stand out compared to all the other current superhero shows.
Superheroes aren't really that novel anymore. They were at the time of Heroes because it was before the MCU or the DC Universe or the CW Arrowverse. But now there's just... I don't think Heroes could really compete.
I think they could on Netflix.
Maybe.
Because when it comes to, I don't know, on regular TV, no, they wouldn't last. People would be more willing to watch the CW as opposed to it. Wait, why are we talking about Heroes? We're talking about the 4400 here.
I know.
We've lost the thread. The 4400 is over.
In general...
even though the 4400 basically became a superhero show in some way, but
in general, I would just like to say that even though this is the exact same premise and there's nothing new really going on, I am excited that the 4400 is coming back, just so there's people like me that didn't get to really understand the show itself, get to watch it from like a new perspective and still actually get to understand the premise to it, because there are people who said that it was a good show, but then there's people like me that never got a chance to see it, so this is like our opportunity.
Sounds
to do
like
this.
when it comes back, it's likely going to end up being a modern day loss from the sound of the premise right now, but
anyways, I'll pass this last little bit of news over to my friend Brian. Take it away.
Gaming strategy guide publisher Prima Games has announced they will be shutting down. The company announced that they will immediately stop publishing any new strategy guides, and the company itself will shutter in January of 2019. They didn't provide an explanation for why they were shutting down, but we have a few guesses. Mainly the fact that the internet exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually believe they announced that they'd be shutting down in spring, though, of 2019.
Did they say spring? I thought they said January.
Yeah, from the reports I read, they said it was in like March and spring.
Oh, okay.
So they'll actually be able to put out a few more strides for some upcoming game, stuff like the new Kingdom Hearts or Anthem.
Well,
and other
they said
AAA
they're
titles.
done publishing guides.
But for people, I guess, who pre-ordered the guides already, I guess they're gonna still make their commitments to those people. But after that, though, they're shutting down pretty much. But it's pretty sad though, because like you said, that pretty much if you want tips on how to beat certain missions and games and stuff, you could pretty much go on to any walkthrough on YouTube, pretty much, and find different types of trips and tricks, and also sites like huge publishing gaming sites like IGN and GameFAQs, stuff like that. They all have like their own online strategy articles where you could just go and check out how to beat certain parts and the missions and all. But yeah, the strategy guides, they've been around for a while though, and it's going to be pretty different without them around, because they pretty much are like collector's items pretty much for a lot of people.
Well, honestly, now I have a very unpopular opinion on this. I don't think it'll be gone for very long. I think it will be back very soon, because even when the video game guides had first come out, people already had means of finding out about tips or tricks through other means. I believe there were magazines like Nintendo Power that gave away like little tips. You could go to your friends, you could go to game stores. Every so often there'd be a radio show talking about games that might give away a tip or a trick. But then there was a whole point of wanting to jot it down on a piece of paper or keep it in a notebook or something, so that way you wouldn't have to use resources outside of a book to figure out how to play a game. And it's the same thing with these kind of strategy guides. Sure, you can go on YouTube and look up a tip and trick. You could go onto a gaming forum. You could go onto the official game's website and they might give you a tip or a trick. But at the end of the day, you'd want to jot down it or you'd want to memorize it. So that way you could do it yourself when you're out there playing the game, which was the whole point of these strategy guides. Because not only would you learn these things, you would also learn things every so often that nobody else on YouTube might even know about. There are some people that just have the tips and tricks, but it's from their own gameplay, not from actually looking at other resources to give away these tips and tricks.
Yeah, and they most likely get those tips from actually the online wikis, I guess, for
And then there's another thing that I wanted to point out, is that there's other things that also come along with strategy guides. One thing that you pointed out, Ira, before we had started the show, is that you're always interested in the artwork that came along with the strategy guides. And while they do have art books specifically for games, there's some people that don't want to buy the book specifically for the art. They just like the little aesthetics that came along with the layout of the strategy guides. And it also came along with additional things as well. I remember when I had the Ultimate Strategy Guide for Skyrim Ultimate Edition, it came with a full layout map showing every location on the map, and on the flip side, all the DLC maps and all that stuff, which isn't something that you can really get map form. You would have to print out like small little pictures that are listed on the wiki pages and things like that. So while right now people are looking at like, oh, strategy guides are inefficient, we're not going to need them, I'm pretty sure that in like a year, give it a year or two, people are going to be like, man, I sure wish I still had a strategy guide to just look at right now. I don't want to have to go on YouTube.
And yeah,
that's enough of my rant.
I think it'll be a nostalgia thing, but honestly, I can just pull out my phone while I'm playing a game, and typically if I want to look at it again, I bookmark the page. I think that, I mean, you mentioned Nintendo Power being an alternative, and Nintendo Power's dead now too, which is sad.
The only, I think, existing strategy guide nowadays is a strategy guide thing called Piggyback or something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I haven't used that before, but that's the only one.
But yeah, it's inevitable for the strategy guides to die down. I mean, we all remember back in the day when we actually had the game manuals included whenever we buy a video game in the case that would tell us about everything, except for Home Improvement. For some reason, their little map thing was like a one-page thing saying men don't need instructions or whatever.
Weird.
But yeah, that was a thing that actually happened. But it bums me out that these things are going away. I found so much use for strategy guides, especially for people like me that don't constantly have access to the internet to look up a strategy for something, but it's a bummer. Yeah. Well, anyways, folks, that about does it for my rant. I apologize to anybody watching. And that also does it for our weekly recap, which allows us to go into our next little segment, Trailer Talk. And in this segment, Brian and I, as well as our friend Ira here, we'll talk about some trailers that dropped out within the week. Now, we only have one listed here because not much for trailers this week. There have been extended looks into movies. We got an extended look into Mortal Engines and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but we've covered those ones so many times, we didn't want to burn you guys out talking about the same projects over and over.
Yeah, and there's also, again, there's also rumors of when certain trailers are going to drop as well, like, this month Avengers 4, but again, those are just rumors.
Well, there was also rumored that we might not even get an Avengers 4 trailer until 2019, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true as well.
Yeah. And really, this section is just for talking about trailers we can watch on YouTube or your preferred video sharing service.
I mean, of course, I could give a recommendation for a trailer you guys can watch later on if you'd like, but right now I'd like to talk about one trailer in particular, and that is the second trailer to Captive Nation. Now, that's an alien invasion film that stars John Goodman. We talked about it a few episodes ago. And the premise is that it takes place in America that has been taken over by some form of invasion after a random incident. We don't know too much of what's happening because the trailer in itself was shaped to be some kind of commercial telling us that everything is fine. Crime rates have gone down. Poverty is gone. Everybody is at peace and we should be happy with our administration. And I say that in quotes because there's a lot of questions on who exactly our administration is in this movie. But the second trailer, now that one was different. That one showed a corrupted version of that commercial, basically, that we got in the trailer. It started off telling us about how everything is fine. But then it started to hack into itself telling us it's a lie. Everything is a lie. You need to rebel. Pay attention to the signs. Listen for the signals. Get ready for action. And then they constantly said the phoenix will rise again. So I guess that's probably the name of their rebellion or revolution or something like that. But at least we know now that there's been some form of alien invasion. Humanity has basically been enslaved to these aliens and are trying to pass it off as regular daily life. And from the second trailer, we now know that there is a resistance, in fact, trying to stop this entire alien administration. So we could most likely eventually see this movie on the Sci-Fi Channel, to be honest. This sounds like a sci-fi original series.
It's a pretty similar to the USA series, Colony.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also sounding similar to basically Independence Day.
Yeah.
Kind
of, yeah.
Yeah, again, this sounds like, like you said, one of these movies I just probably wait to see on TV or something.
Mm-hmm.
I might see it in theaters, because I really like this premise. I loved Colony before it got canceled, never got to see the third season. But this is the type of premise I like.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I would definitely give it a watch, because I like John Goodman.
Yeah.
I thought he was pretty good in 21 Cloverfield Lane, where he played as a conspiracy theorist, talking about how the world got attacked by aliens and everything. And this sounds like the total opposite. Somebody who's freaking out about the aliens, and in this movie, he seems to be playing as somebody who's kind of taking orders from the aliens. Like
yeah.
Some higher up on the administration or something like that. But all in all, it seems like a really good alien movie. I can't really say that it's the movie that I'm the most excited about coming out, but it is a movie that looks fun. It's definitely a nice change from the Cloverfield movies that have been coming out lately. But that's about all I can say about it. Now, that was the only trailer that we had for this episode, but like I said, I'd give a recommendation. Netflix recently dropped a second trailer for the Buster Scruggs film.
That's actually a good one. Especially after the hype of Red Dead Redemption 2 just came out a couple weeks ago. If you're basically in the mood for more westerns, then this actually looks pretty good. It's made by the Coen brothers. The people who made like movies like No Country for Old Men and other western type movies
Fargo.
like that. Fargo and it's that basically guarantees it's going to be like those type of quality movies. So it's actually a pretty good looking movie right there, and it's actually gotten a lot of positive and reviews from critics as well.
Now, for those of you who haven't gotten to see our first explanation on the first trailer for this film, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is a Western anthology that is going to revolve around 6 completely different stories, but all seem to be tied around this one highly charismatic gunslinger by the name of Buster Scruggs. And there are a lot of very well-named actors and actresses in this movie. We got Liam Neeson, we got James Franco, we got some good names in the movie, and I am definitely looking forward for it to come out. So
this is actually going to be a theatrical, or at least at first. Then it's going to be on Netflix. It's a pretty interesting looking movie right there.
Yeah, so definitely looking forward to it. Anyways, without further ado, it's time to enter our discussion piece. Now, we have only one discussion piece to talk about today because there's just been a lot of bad news, so we focused on the news today. but we do have a little discussion piece. But I will let my friend Brian pass it along since he took the liberty to include this discussion piece in the script.
So you all know I love Destiny. I've yelled about it quite a bit on this show. So earlier this week, Activision had an earnings call with their investors where they have this every year, and it's essentially how they announce their earnings, how their franchises are doing, all that good stuff. Or, in this case, the not-so-good stuff. See, Activision hasn't had the best year, at least in terms of how investors would view it. Black Ops 2 only made $500 million in its first day, instead of having exponential growth from the last game.
Only.
Yes, and they said that many of their game series are not performing as well as they'd like, specifically calling out the Destiny franchise. And COO Cody Johnson actually said, in specifics to Destiny, that they will be adding new monetization options to the game and pushing out content at a faster pace. Yeah. Now this has me and many other Destiny fans extremely worried. Because what this translates to is essentially there will be more microtransactions in the game, and they'll be pushing out content faster, which means there'll probably be less time to work on it. Now, a lot of us in the Destiny community call this Destiny 2 Year 1, where the microtransactions were everywhere and the DLC was terrible. Now, with the launch of the Forsaken expansion, Destiny finally got back to a good place. Microtransactions are no longer overly intrusive. The expansion itself had a wide berth of content. It's just amazing.
I've heard a lot of people say that Destiny 2 Forsaken was what Destiny 2 should have been upon its release.
It's basically what the Taken King was for Destiny 1, pretty much, is what the Forsaken is what a lot of people are saying.
And this has a lot of fans worried that despite all the changes that Destiny has managed to make to win back its fans, Activision will force them to go, turn the needle back, to go back to, too many microtransactions, too much quick, bad content.
Now, Bungie had recently made a response to this, right?
Yes, they have. Current franchise director Luke Smith has said that Bungie is actually very happy with the direction Destiny is going, that they're happy with the way Forsaken is being received, and that they're going to continue to develop their game for their existing fan base. Now, one of the things Cody Johnson said was that the core player base of Destiny has yet to re-engage with it. And that's a curious statement, because how do you define a core player base?
Exactly. Now, one thing I find a little confusing about this is the fact that Activision thinks that the solution to getting more players involved in Destiny 2 is to increase the number of microtransactions and the amount of DLC that's rushed. We all remember vanilla Destiny when it first launched.
We do.
Barely any content at all, and a lot of it was focused around DLC, lore cards, failed DLC, failed aspects that a lot of things in Destiny had flopped. And because of that, there were a lot of people who were less willing to play a Destiny game in the first place. Destiny 2 had come out. It started off with veteran Destiny players because they were so dedicated to the game, they loved it so much they would give it a second shot. And there were other people who were willing to give it a chance as well. And as DLC had progressed, people had started to eventually like it. Then Forsaken had come out. I've heard nothing but good reception when it came to Forsaken. They've drawn in new players from everywhere. People who were originally skeptical about Destiny are suddenly starting to like it now because Forsaken is giving them the things that they want. What you don't want to do is increase the things that will make people stop playing the game because you think that it'll get more people to want to play the game. It's totally backwards logic. Now, with a normal game like, say, Call of Duty, they might be able to get away with something like that because they have a huge fan base. Battlefield. Right now they're in a lot of hot water, but the Battlefield franchise does have a huge community. Destiny's fan base has always been on thin ice because of all the bad decisions Destiny had made in the past. They cannot afford to throw in more bad options because it's just going to make people want to give up on the franchise.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of the player base blames Bungie for the decisions that turned Destiny 2 into what it is. And from what we can tell, Destiny 2 was a much more casual, friendly experience than Destiny 1 was. Especially what Destiny 1 eventually became through DLC and fix. It was a complete reversion, more designed to get, the casual player to play for an hour a week and then spend a few bucks at the microtransaction shop than for the hardcore players to go in and grind and have a great time with. And we've sort of got back to a middle ground. It's leaning a little more hardcore than usual, which can turn some people away, I'll admit. But That's not what Activision wants. They don't want the hardcore players that will grind out all the gear. They want the much larger audience of casual players who will grind out some of the gear and then pay for the rest. Because that's what it's all about. They don't care about how many players are actually playing Destiny. They care about how much the players are paying for Destiny.
That's the thing with Activision. They used to be a really good video game company, but nowadays they're a mediocre video game company, but in an exceptional business. They focused a lot more on business strategies and what people will buy, as opposed to just content to get people to stick around on the game to constantly play, which in itself sounds like a weird business decision, because if you give the people what they love, they're more likely to play your game and are more likely to probably give a shot at buying whatever you're selling. You shouldn't focus specifically on what you want to sell to them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's weird.
It's weird, but it's Activision. And at this point, I think Destiny is kind of at another crossroads. I think Bungie itself really likes the direction it's taking Destiny in, and the fans really like the direction it's taking Destiny in. In fact, rumors for Destiny 3 are that it's going to go even more hardcore with more RPG-like elements, more grinding, more things the hardcore players love. But Activision doesn't want that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, Activision pretty much is they're pretty much a money company these days, and yeah, they want like you said, people to pay more for the microtransactions and monetization going forward. So, that's probably going to be a problem with Destiny 3 when I guess it's eventually announced that it might go into a more modernization direction. I guess unless Bungie somehow is able to take the Destiny franchise away from Activision and go to like another publisher or something, but. So yeah, we just gotta wait to see that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Yeah, it is unfortunate though, but I do certainly wish the best for Destiny. It had a really bad reputation at first, and it seems like it's really starting to finally do well. As much as I'd like to hope, well, and I'm still going to hope anyways, I really hope that Destiny kind of stands its ground against Activision. Because too many times companies and video games kind of taking the wrong move because Activision wants to make what they think is a smart business decision, you know? Mm-hmm. And Destiny, it's a game. I want Destiny to be a really great franchise. I want it to be, because I remember when they were first working on the original Destiny, Bungie itself had wanted a game that wasn't Halo. They wanted to branch out. They wanted to do really great things, you know? And they had the opportunity with Destiny. It's just they had a couple of bumps in the road. And Destiny 2 is them finally getting decent traction, finally getting a decent fan base, finally getting people to really want to expect things in the future. And if they just do what Activision's doing, whatever Activision wants, there are a lot of people who are going to be upset. And I'd hate to see the ramifications of what would happen if Bungie makes another wrong move.
Yeah, I mean, I love this franchise. It's pretty much the only game I play anymore. I probably put thousands of hours into it at this point. But it's on the cliff edge, and it will probably be there for quite a while because they've made so many mistakes. Forsaken was a few steps back, but one more terrible period will end this franchise. People are already losing faith in it, have lost faith in it, and one more bad thing it'll end it. They'll lose the fan goodwill. They've already lost most of it, and they're gaining it back slowly but surely, but we still remember.
Mm-hmm. Man. Well, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that about did it for our discussions for this week. Like I said, we only had one because we were focusing mostly on the news. So that about does it for today's episode of The Phone Booth here at the Voice of Stockton on KXVS Radio. My name is Ed Heitman, and joining me in the studio today is my good friend and co-host Brian Rodriguez.
Hello. As
well as our guest for today's show, Ira Ford.
How's it going?
Now, please remember, ladies and gentlemen, to tune in every Saturday from 1 to 2 here at the Phone Booth, where Brian and I will do our very best to cover all things in the world of pop culture. Anything from movies to TVs, video games, comic books, you name it, we'll do our very best to cover it. Now, until then, ladies and gentlemen, please have a wonderful day. Please stick around. We have some good content here at the Voice of Stockton on KXVS. Please check it out, and have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.